Yes, you. Welcome to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast, a podcast for people who want to disrupt their lives for a good reason, to make it count. I'm your host, Jen Glantz, and every week I'll drop a new episode with stories from real people just like you, who woke up one morning and decided to make big changes, starting with small things. We'll cover topics like entrepreneurship, love, failure, and self-care. Hey, you're not getting any younger, so let's make this an adventure. Ready? Today's podcast is brought to you by Thinkific. Thinkific is the #1 platform to create, market, and sell your own online courses or membership sites. They have revolutionized how individuals earn and learn online by building an all-in-one platform designed for both course creators and their audience. Try Thinkific for free today at try.thinkific.com/Jen Glantz. That's try.thinkific.com/Jen Glantz. You are going to love it. Hey, any youngers. It's me, your host, Jen Glantz, back with another episode of the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast. Welcome to the month of March. I have always loved the month of March. I have always found that it's a transition month. We start off the year strong and bold and with all these expectations and these goals. And then in the middle of January, we start to feel a little stuck and weird and burnt out and exhausted. And that carries through to February, especially depending on where you live and how the weather affects you. But March is different. March signifies change. It's something new and different and fresh, and that feeling alone is enough to drive you to, do something incredible in your own life. Good things have happened to me in March. I met Adam in March. I met Goofy in March. I started this podcast in March. I got married last March. March is always the month of blossoming, of new things entering our life that we didn't know were possible. And I want you to keep your eyes and ears and hearts and bodies open to this in the month of March. Today's topic is something that I have wrestled with for many years, to the point where I didn't realize how common of a feeling and struggle this can be. And that's why I want to talk about this weird intersection that some of us might have and feel when all of a sudden we find that we feel the feelings of both grief and happiness all at once in our lives. I remember a couple of years ago being so angry at myself for laughing. I just remember sitting on my bed, biting the tips of my fingers, trying to shake off that emotion, because laughter signifies happiness, and happiness makes you and the people around you feel like you're okay. And if you're not okay, then how could you be happy? Have you ever accidentally swallowed an ice cube? Because that is what swallowing happiness feels like when you're burning with grief and you don't want the happiness to show. I was going through one of the most traumatic and tough times of my life a couple of years ago, and that time period lasted a few years. And inside of those thousands of days, my friends, there were moments of really, really immense and intense grief. What we don't talk about when we talk about grief is that it's a suffocating feeling, but it takes a break. Everything exhausting needs a nap, right? So when grief would go to sleep and I'd find myself feeling okay, or something would make me feel good or happy, I would feel so guilty. How dare you smile, Jen, when your life is falling apart? How could you go out and see friends and pretend like nothing is going on? Are you seriously going to let yourself laugh at that joke? What would grief say about that, Jen? Grief became this weird, invisible person who ruled my life. I felt like it judged me, and when I betrayed it, it punished me when I allowed myself to feel positive. But the truth is, when we feel emotions, they have to come out of us through one exit, and one exit only: our mouth. We can't swallow grief just like we can't swallow happiness. We have to let it all out. I've been noticing this now, many, many years later, just in my everyday life. The other day during an argument with Adam, one of us said something and I just started laughing. I had gone from steaming with anger to spitting out this deep-hearted chuckle accidentally. I looked around the room and I felt like I shouldn't have done that, and I was mad that I did that. But you know what? It felt sort of good to break from that negative emotion with this release of happiness. I said to Adam, I'm still mad at you, but it felt really good to laugh in that moment. The silly thing about our emotions is that we can feel a million different things all at once in one day throughout the span of a really horrible time. What if you let yourself feel those things unapologetically? And if somebody around you happens to ask you why you're laughing after spending the last 5 minutes crying, and if that person happens to be your invisible friend Grief, then look them in the eye and say, sorry, I'm not sorry. I'm just letting myself feel. I hope that somebody out there hears this and feels a little bit different about how they're feeling when they're not feeling so well. Because when you're dealing with grief or trauma or depression or anxiety or all of these things that we keep bottled up inside of us, those things do take a break, just like I said. And when they take a break, we feel other things, even if it's temporary or just for a few minutes. And that feeling of guilt washes over us, but it doesn't have to, and it shouldn't have to. And I hope that you remember that. And maybe you know somebody who's going through a tough time and hasn't really told you the extent of their tough time, and maybe this is what they need to hear and listen to, and I hope that this helps somebody out there going through something tough. All my love, Jen Glantz. Hey you! Thank you for listening to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast. There are hundreds of thousands of pods out there, so thank you for listening to this one. You can find the show notes for this week's episode up on our website, anyyounger.com. Subscribe, rate, and review the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast on iTunes so that other ears around the world can listen too. Oh, and join our secret You're Not Getting Any Younger Facebook group, where over 1,000 people are talking about how to disrupt their lives, for a good reason, to make it count. Until next week, all my love, Jen Glantz.